So in the last section, we set up our show post component. In this section, we'll set up our user profile dashboard, which will allow us access to our edit post component. So let's begin by setting up a little bit of styling to help us with the user dashboard. So let's first start with the flex profile drawer. And this will just be a drawer on the left side of the user profile dashboard. And we can do display flex and then flex direction row. And then we can just set the margin top to 20 px, margin left to -50, -90 px, and margin right of 25 px. And next we can set the header of the second column of the profile dashboard to text line of center, which will center the header. And then we can have another styling property for each row of the drawer. Because remember, our user profile data will have multiple properties, and we'll display each of those properties in a row. So we can also do the flex box for this as well. So display flex and flex direction row. And each row will have a margin of 10 px, and we can give it a little bit of padding as well. And this is it for styling. And now we can go to profile.js. And remember, this one already has some starter code because this is a component I set up in my last course. So if you're wondering how to set up this component from scratch, just see that course. It's a completely free course, and yeah, it's just under React Redux course on my profile. So we're going to update this component. And unlike displaying all the posts in a table like we did in the postgreSQL component, we'll display each post in a card. And we'll also need a dialog here to both edit and delete the post. Now that we're done with our imports, let's go to the render method. And in the exact same way that we set up the comments and posts in the post component, we'll set up this as in the same exact way with a ternary expression and a map statement. And this map statement is going to be called on the array of user posts that we get from Redux. So let's start off with this.props.userPost. And we actually haven't set up the actions and reducers for this, so let's set it up now. So let's start off with our action types.js file, which is located in the actions directory in the store folder. And we can create two new action types of fetch user posts and remove user posts. And now we can go to our action files and set them up as action creators. So let's set up fetch user posts, and remember to pass in posts as the payload property. And now we can set up a remove user post. And then we can set up the actual user post state property in the post reducer, since it's the most logical place to put it. And we can just copy and paste two additional case statements and set it up in the exact same way that we have comments and posts set up. So let's now save and close all our files and go back to our profile.js. Now we can declare the user post property we just created and set it in our map state to props function. Now that we have the actions and reducers set up, we need a way to get the user posts from our database. And we're going to put the Axios request inside of our component didMount method. And of course we need a parameter to look up these posts, since again we don't want all the posts. So we are going to use the user ID. And we'll get the user ID from the DB profile, which is again in the auth reducer. So we can add it now to our map state to props function. And then we have our axios.get request, and then it's /API/getUserPost. And if you didn't watch the express route section, it's this API route is located in the routes file in the main folder in our Express server. And this is the route right here we're using to get the user post, and it's under the user profile section. So back to our profile component, and again we need to pass in params in the user ID, which we're getting from the DB profile. We then chain a .then statement to our Axios request, and we need to save the response to Redux. So let's go to our map dispatch to props function, and we'll create a property called setUserPost, and then pass in post as the parameter, and then we dispatch actions and then fetch user post. And remember, fetch user post is the name of our action creator we set up in the actions file. And it's important to understand this. It may seem like I'm over explaining things, but it's easy to get lost and you may forget where something is coming from. So for that reason, I like to explain everything in detail. And now we need to import our actions from the actions directory at the top. And let's just go back and fix a small mistake. Fetch user posts, of course, should be all lowercase, because remember, it's not an action type. And now we can go back to our Axios request, and then in the then statement, we can just use the setPost property that we just set. And remember, just pass in rest.data, which is what contains all of the user's posts. And then we just do our error handling. And let's now go in our render method and declare the render post functional component. And again, we'll create this in a second. And in this exact same way, we're going to call the map function on the array of user posts and then pass in each post as an argument to the render post. So now that that's done, let's create the actual render post functional component. And again, it's going to be a card, so let's add the card and let's give it a style of width of 500, height of 200, and then we'll give it a margin bottom and a padding bottom. Now we can start with the card header. And in the title, we'll need to make it clickable, so let's import the link component from React Router. So again, same with the post.js component, let's wrap our title with the link and give it a path of post to each individual post ID. So even in the user profile dashboard, a user will be able to click on a post and go to that individual post. And now let's start with the subheader. So pass in an empty div to the curly brackets of the subheader. And next, let's create two new styling classes to app.css. And these are going to be very basic. These are just going to be a flex display with that is either a column or a row. So a flex column or a flex row. And then be sure to import the app.css file to profile.js. So our subheader is going to be set up as a flex column, and each column will have several flex rows. So our first row will just be the date created of the post. Next, we'll have our edit and delete buttons here. And both of these edit and delete buttons will be one row. And let's wrap our edit button in a link, since again, clicking on edit will take the user to an edit post component. So editing a post should have its own component, which again we'll set up in the next section. And then for deleting, we don't have a separate delete post component, so we can just use a dialog for that. And again, to do this, we can just do this.state and then open equals true. And again, we're going to set up the dialog the exact same way as we did in the show post component. And finally, we can finish off our card with the card content. And this will be the body of the post. And remember to include style overflow hidden. And what this does, if a post is much longer than the card, the post gets hidden. The overflowing post gets hidden. So you don't have a situation where there's text that's coming outside of the card. And now we can set up our local component state. So let's go to the top of the class and create a constructor with the super method. And let's declare this.state, and we're going to need two properties, open and post ID. And again, open, like our show post component, is just to open the dialog box. And post ID is going to be used to help us know which posts the user wants to delete. So let's now declare two helper functions, handle click open and handle click close. And of course, these are just to open and close the dialog box. And since we now have these helper functions, let's replace the setState method in the delete button and replace it with this helper function. And let's also finish up our handle click open, and because we do need the post ID passed in as an argument. Let's now set up our dialog box, and we can work smart, and instead of writing everything from scratch, let's just copy and paste it from the show post component. So let's now make some changes to this. So let's first start by changing edit comment to delete confirm, since this dialog is to delete posts. And next we can get rid of the input element because we don't need to enter any text here. And we can change it to deleting post. And then our first button is going to call the this.delete post function. And our second cancel button can actually be left as is. So let's now set up the delete post function. So set it up as an arrow function, and the first thing we need is the post ID, which we get from our local state. Remember that when a user clicks on the delete button, the post ID of the post that the button is on is automatically saved to the local state, which is what allows us to accurately delete the right post. After our post ID variable, we need an axios.delete statement. So the very first thing we have to do is actually delete the comments that are associated with the post before we can delete the actual post itself. And this is due to PSQL's foreign key constraint. And we'll discuss foreign key constraints in much more depth in the admin module. But for now, just know that we can't just directly delete the post. We have to first delete each comment associated with the post. Because, I mean, if you think about it, if we just delete the post, what would happen to the comments. So let's do axios.delete API/delete/post comments, and then we pass in the post ID as an object to the data property. And remember, data itself is a object which holds the value of a object. We then do a .then statement, and we do another axios delete statement here, and this is where we delete the actual post. And we do it with the same exact post ID. Then we do another .then statement inside of our first .then statement to just console.log the response. Then we do our regular error handling, and we have to finally close the dialog box, and then we'll redirect the user to the home page. And make sure you've imported the history utility. So let's just look through our app and see if we made any small mistakes. So yes, so the first one, so it should be handle click close on our delete post function. And remember to import Axios as well. And let's also fix something in our click handle opener. Remember to put the curly brackets inside of the parentheses. And then we need a closing tag on the card header. And let's see if we need anything else. And yes, padding bottom should not have a L after it, and replace it with the colon. And hidden should be a string. And let's add a underscore to user ID. And the edit post link should have a slash before it and after it as well. And our cancel button should be handle click close. And we definitely need to pass map dispatch to props to the connect function. And now we can test our app. So let's click on the login button. And after login, we do see, yes, if we go on the profile, all our profile info is here. Perfect. And let's finish setting up our blog and the edit post component before we completely test everything out. And we'll do this in the next section.